You're watching the Brother Henry and You Show.
Engaging. Informative. Inspirational.
Enjoy today's program.
We are on part 6 of our series, The Walk Through Rejection, and I believe that these episodes have been a blessing to you. And I hope you've been learning something, because I've been learning something. I don't care who you are, where you come from, what continent you live on. Everybody deals with some rejection in their life. So I hope that this has caused some healing, even if not much, some healing in your life. And today we're going to be going to part 6, and I want to talk about when rejection and isolation meet. It's just like rejection here, isolation here. What happens when those two come together? Let's talk about it. It's one thing to feel rejected, but it's another to experience isolation as a result of rejection. Many of us experience rejection. We know what it feels like to be brushed off. We know what it feels like to be told no. We talked about that a few weeks ago. We know what it's like to feel rejection, but it's another thing to experience isolation, which is a result of rejection. Rejection gives birth to isolation. It creates a wilderness experience, having you to experience that no one cares. Rejection gives birth to isolation. It creates a wilderness experience for you. It'll have you feeling like nobody cares, nobody loves me. Having you to feel like that you are in the wilderness all by yourself. All because you were rejected. Rejection creates isolation. It'll put you in this self-pity mode. Woe is me. I'm the only one that's going through. And honey, I want you to know you're not the only one that's going through. But I believe also that there is a huge difference between rejection and isolation. We need to know the difference. Isolation simply means setting apart or keeping apart. You're like staying away. When these two come together or unites, the emotions can be very overwhelming. And some people don't know how to handle those emotions, but what I've learned is this. We have to give people the freedom to process. Whether that's publicly or privately or with a friend, we have to give people the freedom to process. Those who are truly hurting by rejection, those who feel isolated. The only reason why people isolate themselves because they really don't trust anybody. Or in some cases, they don't know who to go to because of fear of being judged or looked at differently. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know who to open up to. I believe we should become a safe place for those who are in that wilderness experience. To those who feel isolated, who've kept themselves apart from others, who love them and care about them. In that moment, they don't feel that way. I get it because I've been there. I've had those moments where I felt rejected and I isolated myself from people who loved me and cared about me. I didn't care at that moment because that was my moment, that was my experience. I praise God for the people who've given me the freedom to process that in private. Because in many cases, isolation is not always good. I've been there before. It's a very, very lonely place to be. Sometimes we make the wilderness our home because we don't think anything will ever change. Oh my God, am I the only one? Wave your hand if I'm not the only one. I've been there. Have you ever been there before? Felt like you were alone? Felt like you were all by yourself? Felt like you were the only one that was going through something? that's what happens. It's a very lonely place. It's like being at home alone and all your family is gone. How many of y'all remember that Christmas movie Home Alone that his family went to New York? They went somewhere and he was left there all by himself, isolated, even though he had a good time. But I want to encourage you, have a good time. It's not easy to have a good time in those moments. Try to think about some positive moments in your life. You know, I understand the wilderness can be a unpleasant experience, but try to see some good in it as well. And even if you don't, that's okay. Again, I've been there. I know exactly how you feel. So you feel rejected and you feel isolated. There were three realities I had to face to receive healing in this area. Number one, it's okay not to be okay. Some people act like they're okay when in reality, they weren't okay. It's okay to be honest with yourself and to be truthful to yourself. I've said this quite often. Paul Young says, the unexposed is the unhealed. Sometimes the truth looks messy. Even if that means risking it all for the sake of freedom, I know that I told the truth. Telling the truth hurts. Telling a lie hurts. Lying to yourself, lying about who you are. It does hurt. Telling the truth hurts, but the pain of that is lesser than telling a lie. So I often tell people, don't lie to yourself. Just be truthful about yourself. Be truthful about who you are. Expose those areas, because that's the only way you're going to get healing. Expose those areas where you need help the most. Number two, I wasn't the only one in the wilderness. I had to realize that. Sometimes when we go through the wilderness or we feel isolated, we feel rejected, we feel like sometimes we're the only one that's going through that. You're not the only one. Number three, being in the wilderness gave me an opportunity to grow and develop. Sometimes our wilderness experiences does that. It teaches us something. I'm not saying God does. I don't believe that God puts us in the wilderness. I think it's just life in general. Crap happens. We go through things. It's life. It hits us in the face. We just have to deal with it. Some people don't know how to deal with it. That's why we're doing these series on rejection. I keep referring to the wilderness because that's where many of us are at right now. We are in the wilderness. Those destructive thoughts. You've kept hidden. The feelings of convincing yourself that the world will be a better place without you. You thinking that nothing will ever change. It will always be like this. You know, a lot of people talk about a bright light at the end of the tunnel. Some of us all we see is darkness because we're in a dark place in our life. We don't see no hope. We don't see that. I keep saying this, it's okay that you don't. But I want to encourage you to see that. Process while you're in the wilderness. It's making you stronger and better. I appreciate those experiences I've had in my life because it made me who I am today. I'm glad I had to go through rejection. I'm glad I had to go through isolation. I'm glad I made loneliness my home in some sense or ways because it made me who I am today so that when rejection comes and isolation comes and all the attachments that goes along with that and my wilderness experience, if it came in my life today, I wouldn't know how to deal with it. Never suffer alone in silence. I talked a little bit earlier about how sometimes isolation can be a bad thing. You know, that's not good, suffering in silence. You need to open up to someone. I know you may be one that's watching and you're saying, well, Jesus is all I need. Well, I'm here to tell you, he's not all you need. You need each other. You need a friend. You need a counselor. You need a therapist. Go talk to your preacher. Open up, talk to somebody, because one thing that causes isolation, the major thing that causes isolation is lack of encouragement. Because if a person is discouraged, they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. They don't see no way out of the wilderness. You know, I looked on Facebook, on Google the other day. I looked at, if you think about the wilderness, it's like a place, a big place, like a desert. Wind is blowing everywhere. You don't see nothing for miles. There's no exit sign to freedom. Some of you feel like that right now. You're in the wilderness all by yourself. There's no exit sign. You can see nothing but desert for miles away. Everything looks hopeless. I want you to know a brighter day is coming. David knew this all too well. Let's read Psalms chapter 25. Psalms chapter 25, verse 16 through 18. David says, "Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. Relieve the troubles of my heart and free me from my anguish. Look on my afflictions and my distress." So a lot of people just won't be honest. But David was very honest. David prayed. David said, hey, I've been lonely. David says, I'm weak. David struggled with distress. David suffered. David had worry problems. He brought it out to the open. He said, this is what I'm dealing with. I believe many of us are dealing with that today. I love verse 18 because he asked God to consider. The word consider means to think carefully about something. The things that he was going through. And my friend, I want you to know today that no matter what you're going through today, God has considered it. He's carefully considered what you're going through. He's concerned about every area of your life. And not only he's concerned, I'm concerned about every area of your life too. Hiding your rejection and isolation will never bring you to complete wholeness. You can say you're not okay. We all know you're not okay. You can say I'm good. How's your day going? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. No, you're not. We need to stop hiding behind those cliches and things. Just be real with yourself. You're not okay. You know you're not okay. You'll never experience complete wholeness that way. You have to eventually come out of your wilderness experience. I understand we all have wilderness experiences, but you have to eventually come out of that. You can't live your life like that. You only got one life to live. Why would you live your whole life miserable, afraid, fearful, abandonment? Why live your life that way? Sometimes we hide in shame because we don't want to expose or bring to light what we are really dealing with. I said this earlier, sometimes people don't do that because they just don't trust people. This is what I had to do. I had to release myself from hiding. And I had to understand that everyone is struggling with something, even those who pretend like they're not. And that's very true. There are those who may pretend like they're not struggling with something, but I want you to know they are struggling with something. God did not create you to suffer alone. God has designed us for fellowship and relationship. So, who can we share our experiences with? It's hard to go to people to say, hey, I feel isolated, I feel alone, I feel rejected. Who can we share our experiences with? Well, you can't do it alone. It's time to conquer rejection and isolation. That way we can experience freedom in our lives. If you feel alone, left out, if you feel different, it's okay. This is a universal feeling, even those who don't want to come to terms to believe in that. Everybody deals with this. So my healing came when I took the risk. I took the risk. Sometimes you have to take the risk. Even what I said earlier, even if it means risking it all, by being honest with myself and how I feel. It's okay to lay your feelings out on the table. I feel this way. These are the thoughts that's running through my mind. You have to do that. You have to process with someone. Taking the risk, no matter how they view you, no matter they may think different about me. Let them think. Who cares what people think? So reach out to someone. Step out. I'm talking to you today. Take the risk. You need to come out of that wilderness experience. Come out of that mindset. I'm always going to be here. I'm the only one going through. I'm an epic failure. No, you're not. If taking the risk releases you from the wilderness, do it. Your moment experience will produce tears of joy and happiness. I want you to know that you're not alone today. I want you to know that I am willing. I'm talking about Henry Harris. I'm willing to take the risk. I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone. I'm willing to step out of my familiar area. And sometimes we don't want to do that because we want to stay. Sometimes the wilderness for many people is a comfortable place. And sometimes we want to go back to what was comfortable and what we were familiar with. But I believe this calls us all on the carpet that if you're tired of being tired, if you're tired of being in that wilderness, you'll eventually take an effort. You'll take the risk. My friend, it's okay not to be okay. Right now, you may be dealing with rejection. You may be dealing with isolation. They both may meet together. And they both may come to your mind. They may come to your house. My question to you today, how will you respond to that? How will you respond to that? I'm not just talking about this just because I'm talking. I experience this in my life all the time. I would say it's a seasonal thing for me. How do we respond to these things when they join hands, when they unite? It becomes a powerful force. Now, my friend, I want you to know that you are even much more powerful than that which opposes you. You're greater than anything that would ever come against you. It's inside of you. It's just who you are. I know you've been through many challenges. I know you may be one of those people that feel like, well, nobody understands what I'm going through. Nobody understands what I'm facing. Maybe people haven't given you the freedom to process in private. Maybe people don't know what it feels like to be alone and isolated and feel like no one cares. I want you to know that I care and Papa cares about you.
Hi, my name's Heather. Thank you for watching the Brother Henry and You show today. If you've enjoyed the show today, visit us at facebook.com/The Brother Henry and You show. Thank you for watching and have a blessed day.